YouTube is now bigger than the entire film industry combined. We're putting Nano Banana against Seedance for the ultimate AI image editing showdown, and I have a ton of tool recommendations and workflows that I'm excited to share with you today. Welcome to your AI film news of the week. Now, before we get going, I want to give a huge thank you to the team at Reply AI for hosting the second annual Reply AI Film Festival during the Venice International Film Festival. Shelby and I were judges for the event, and it was really awesome to meet all of the contestants, and it was really cool to see that the winner of that competition got their start at Curious Refuge. All right, let's get to the news. So the first thing that I want to talk about this week is a tool called Seedream. So you may have heard of this online image platform from ByteDance. Essentially, this is another fantastic tool that allows you to generate images and then also edit images using a simple prompt. Everybody was freaking out about Nano Banana. This is very similar to Nano Banana in the way that it works. And one of the big perks is the fact that you can get your images in 4K resolution versus Nano Banana that tends to be about HD quality. But I don't want to just talk about it. Let me show you how to use it along with some tests to see how it stacks up against other tools. There is an online platform where you can use Seedream, but I'm actually going to use FreePic because they can kind of aggregate all sorts of other AI image generation tools directly inside of their platform. So I think it's a little easier when you have the ability to pick and choose the right platform for the specific shot that you are working on. So first things first, you do have the ability to generate images using Seedream, but long story short, the images are simply not as good as Midjourney or some of the other image generators on the market. So I'm not going to show you how to do that inside of this tutorial, but you do have the ability to do that. They say that their image generator is absolutely the best. I have my doubts. So for our example, I want to use their editing feature. So I have this picture here of me wearing the sweater. You can see it very specifically says 1991 on the sweater. It's brown, there's a black undershirt, and basically I'm just standing here in the studio looking at the camera. And I have this other shot here of this man who kind of looks like me. It's not exactly me, but basically I used character reference in Midjourney to generate this image, and I want to swap the face and the clothes of this character with me from the original image. So long story short, I'm working on film. I want me to be a consistent character inside of that film. How do we swap it? Well, all you have to do is select both of those images. I'm going to drag and drop it to the image references section here. And for our prompt, I'm basically going to say, swap the picture of the man in the sci-fi image for the man standing on the blank background. Now, under model, make sure you are under Seedream. So just go to Seedream here. And then at the bottom, you can see we have Seedream 4K, give us all of that resolution. And then at the very bottom as well, we want to do maximum iteration. So let's go ahead and go to 4 for the quantity, the number of images that we're going to create. And then under aspect ratio, we're going to make sure we're in 16:9 because hypothetically we're working on a film project, and go ahead and hit generate. Okay, so after about 30 seconds, it generated 4 images. Let's take a look. So we have the first one here, and I think the character's face is a little too similar to the original character's face. Like, it doesn't really look like me, but the clothing is very accurate. It even has the 1991 there on the sweater, so not too bad. We have shot number 2 here. That's not 1991. That's too many 9s, too many 1s. And obviously the lighting of the character is not quite right. We have shot number 3 here, which can you notice what part is different than the original image that we uploaded? So not a great result there. And then we have the final shot here, which I actually think it did okay with the character. It's not perfect. The stubble is definitely a little off, and the text on the sweater is not great, but the lighting looks pretty good. So all in all, you can see it's all about iteration still. It's going to take quite a few generations to get the one that you're looking for. And of course, when you're using FreePic, you have the ability to hit the download button and then download PNG because you get highest quality when you download the PNG image. So that is using Seedream. We'll come back to Seedream in just a second, but let's put a pin in that. And I want to talk about a new tool that dropped this last week that does a very similar thing. So Reeve AI is an online AI image generation tool that really specializes in the ability to type in text and get an image in return that is very accurate to what you typed in. Specifically, it's a really good model for generating text to use for graphic design projects, posters, billboards, things like that. It's not necessarily the best tool for generating cinematic or realistic imagery, but very good for kind of marketing and graphic design projects. Reeve AI came out this last week with their own text-based editor that allows you to upload images. So you can see where I'm going with this. Let's go ahead and do the exact same test using Reeve AI and compare the differences. To use the tool, all you have to do is log in to your Reeve AI account, and very similar to other tools, you have the ability to drag and drop the assets that you want to use for your prompt. So we'll just drag and drop the image of the man in the spaceship, and then of course the original image of me wearing the brown sweater. And while we wait, I do want to note that it will generate 3 images at a time. So you don't have the ability to select 4, and each one is a little different, giving you more variety to pick and choose the right one for your project. Okay, it's been about 30 seconds. Let's take a look at our results here. We have shot number 1. That doesn't really look a lot like me, and the clothing is not what we're looking for. Shot number 2, it's basically the original image. They didn't change anything. And then shot number 3, it's the original image. It didn't really change anything. So now the big question is, which tool is best? People love Nano Banana. Seedream has been saying that it is actually the best tool now, and Reeve AI just came out and is a new contender on the block. Well, I think the best thing that we can do is put together a few tests and decide for each other which one is the better image editing tool. So to set the stage for this comparison, I want to let you know that we generated 4 images for Seedream and Nano Banana, and then 3 images each using Reeve AI because you can't generate 4. So basically 1 maxed out generation, and we picked the best result to compare which tool is best. So let's take a look. So in example number 1 here, we have our Nano Banana output. You can see it didn't change my face. It didn't change the clothes. Nano Banana did not do a great job. Seedream gave us this generation, which was not very accurate with the number on the sweater. The character looks a little better and the background changed a little bit. So it's not a great generation, but it's okay. And then finally, we have Reeve AI, which completely changed the inside of the spaceship. And that character, I have no idea who that is, but that's definitely not me. So I think in this case, Seedream did the best, but it's not a great generation. For example 2, I have this image that I generated inside of Midjourney, and I asked the tools to remove the spaceship in the background. So this is the result from Nano Banana. You can see it's actually not too bad. I like how it was creatively adding in some of these textured elements in the background, but it has the appropriate bokeh, so it seems pretty realistic. Now, the end of that spaceship is visible behind the character, so it didn't intelligently understand that that was kind of the wings of the spaceship, but not too bad. We have this generation from Seedream, which on the surface looks good, but it is slightly different than the original image that we uploaded. There's some elongating of the torso. Some of the clothing is just slightly different, and it's overall a bit more contrasted than the original image. So a lot more changes, but you get more resolution, so it's kind of a give and take here. And the final generation comes from Reeve, and we have this result here. I don't love what it put behind the spaceship here, but I do like that it actually did intelligently remove the back of the spaceship, even though perhaps that might be some of the spaceship. So in this test, I think Reeve did the best, although I think it could be argued that Nano Banana might be a bit better. For our next test, I have this image of me in this sci-fi film here, and I want to do an angle change. One of the coolest parts about using one of these new image editing tools is the fact that you can prompt in for the camera angle to be in a completely different location, and most of the time it does a pretty good job. Now, I should note that most of the examples you'll see online when they change the camera angle, they're going to use a very generic environment or a very generic person, but this is a complex scene. The character is looking in a specific direction, they're wearing very specific clothes in a background that is, very specific. So let's take a look at our results from the various tools. So shot number 1 here is from Nano Banana, and I do think that it could be improved in terms of overall realism. It's almost coming across as somewhere between a photo and concept art, but the proximity of the character's face to the window and to the background seems pretty accurate compared to the previous image. In Seedance Pro, we have this image here, which does look very realistic, but it does seem like the character's now in a new part of the ship. They're not in the exact same location. And then for shot number 3 inside of Reeve, we have this shot, which again, it looks like they're in a somewhat similar ship, but this one, I think the quality is really the worst out of all of the image generators. The ship does not look very realistic. There's a lot of weird artifacting going on, and frankly, it doesn't look like he's at all in the exact same location as the reference image. So in this case, I think that Nano Banana did the best job. For test number 4, let's do a VFX example and do some matte painting here. So I have this image from Midjourney, and I wanted to prompt in a castle in this environment. This is the result we got from Nano Banana. I think it looks pretty good. I think that castle looks somewhat realistic, although it does come across a bit more as a very classic matte painting background that looks like a painting in a real world environment. So it's okay, but not the best result. This is the result from Seedream. That very much looks like Cinderella's castle at Walt Disney World, but it is pretty realistic. I was very generic in the way that I prompted, and this is the result. I think it did a really good job. And I also like how it's kind of behind the mountain. It actually composited certain elements in front of the castle to give it depth and to basically sell the overall effect. And it's cool to see the lighting coming in from the right side and how it really matches a lot of the lighting that you see both in the rocks and in the larger cliff face on the right. And then finally, we have this result from Reeve, which frankly just looks like weird concept art. It didn't do a very good job at all. For our 5th test, I wanted to do some expression changes. So we have that image of me on the spaceship, and I said, make this character sad. And inside of Nano Banana, we have this shot here, and you can see, yeah, he looks sad. Maybe not overly sad, just like quietly sad on the inside. And there's definitely water on the edges of his eyes. So he's about to cry, which I think is pretty good from Nano Banana. And here's the result from Seedream. And you can see he definitely is more sad, but he also looks a bit older than I am. And you can see we have that contrast problem. So it increased the contrast even though we weren't asking for it. So Seedream kind of tends to have that problem. And then finally, we have this result from Reeve, which I guess that's a sad face. It seems a bit more confused, so you might have to run it a couple more times to increase the sadness. So not the best result from Reeve. I think Nano Banana did the best job in this test. And then for our final test, I wanted to do a clothing swap example. So I have this image of a Midjourney character that used me as a reference. And let's say that we want to change what he's wearing. So I came across this sweater from Louis Vuitton, and I kid you not, it's $25,000. So obviously I would never be putting on that sweater myself, but let's use AI tools to do a virtual try on here. So this is the result from Nano Banana. It's pretty close, although a couple of the patches from the original image came through. So I think you'd have to run it a couple more times to get the exact look that you're going for. But I do like that the zipper seems pretty accurate, and especially the brown cuffs, they're accurate to what the original sweater was. In Seedance, we generated this result. I love that the overall resolution is better, even though the accuracy of the clothing is slightly different than the original sweater. And I should note that the original sweater did not have pockets in the front, so it's having some creative liberties there. And finally, we have this result from Reeve AI. And the thing I like about Reeve is, similar to Nano Banana, it's very accurate when it comes to the secondary parts of the image. So the background, the composition, it's just much closer to the original image compared to Seedream, which can get a little crazy with it. So a pretty good result from Reeve, and I think for this example, it did the best job. So after all of that, which AI image editor do I recommend? Well, it's kind of a toss-up, but I will say I still think Nano Banana is the most intelligent and accurate editor on the market. Although That being said, Seedream does give you the ability to export your images in 4K, and I think having that extra quality when it comes to just small details, whether it's the face of the character or the fidelity of the texturing in the clothing that you're swapping, you may prefer to use Seedream for commercial projects, but it's not going to be the best tool for every situation. And that leaves us with Reeve AI, which I think is a really powerful tool. Is it better than Nano or Seedream? Probably not. But if you do a lot of graphic design work, I highly recommend subscribing to their tool, and the fact that you have a built-in image editor really makes it very appealing if you work in a marketing or advertising department. Now, this week, there's a ton of news as it relates to Google and YouTube, but let's focus on Google for a second. So they came out with an update to Google VO3, and the fast version of Google VO3 is only 15 cents per generation. But I should note that if you're with the Google Ultra plan, you do have the ability to generate an unlimited number of VO3 fast videos, which is an incredible deal. Now, to put all of those prices in perspective, if you generate a 5-second video using Seed Dance, which is what we believe to be the most accurate AI video model, it costs 12 cents. So VO3 is not the cheapest model on the market, but you do have the added benefit of generating multiple videos at a time, and you obviously get sound effects and lip syncing directly inside of VO3, which is pretty awesome. And speaking of Google VO3, we saw in the comments recently that a lot of people were raving about how good VO3 fast is compared to Google VO3 quality. A lot of times when you use these AI models, you almost always want to use the best quality model, obviously, because you want really good quality. But we've actually been testing out Google VO3 fast, and sometimes the results are better than VO3 quality. Let me show you a quick example. So to use Google Flow, all you have to do is go to the Flow website, go ahead and click on New Project. And down here we have text to video, but frames to video or image to video is what we like using most of the time. And for our image, I'm going to use this woman who's basically doing some chores, someone knocks, and then she looks up. So let's go ahead and drag and drop that image into Google VO and go ahead and crop and save. And I have a super long prompt here. I'm not going to read it to you because that would be just frankly really boring. And for our model, we'll go ahead and make sure that we are using Google VO3 fast. And for the number of outputs, we can do 4. And the cool part is when I generate this, it's going to be free because I have an Ultra account. So let's go ahead and hit render. And while that renders, I do want to note that if you wanted to use the quality model, all you have to do is select VO3 quality here. So it has beta audio, VO3 quality, and you can generate up to 4 video clips. But again, you're going to pay the Ultra prices for these generations, and in this case that would be $1.60. So whenever you're ready to render VO3 quality, all you have to do is go ahead and hit render. Okay, so the generations from Google VO3 fast take about 56 seconds each. VO3 quality take about 1 minute and 12 seconds. So VO3 fast is technically faster, but I would say cheap is probably a better word because it's simply way more affordable than using Google VO3 quality. So let's take a look at our first example from VO3 fast. Not bad. Let's take a look at number 2. Again, really dynamic movement. It looks really good. And let's take a look at number 3. Oh no, she's set in the mess. That's not good. And finally, we have number 4. Okay, so as you can see, a lot of these are pretty darn good. Now let's compare the result from Google VO3 quality. So you can see that even with the quality render, there's some wonky things going on. The napkin completely disappears. And I wouldn't say that the quality of the generation is really that much better than fast generations from Google VO3. So I want to fly through a bunch of quick examples with you to basically compare and contrast the different models to see ultimately where they play inside of an AI filmmaking workflow. And the best way to do that is to compare the video against ground truth. That is a real life video of the same action. So let's start at the very top. We'll work our way through. So here's a real life video of this woman in New York City hailing a cab. And basically I wanted to test text to video inside of VO3. Here's the result from VO3 Fast. You can see the cup kind of disappears there. So kind of weird, but not bad. And then the cup disappears on top. And then here's the result from VO3 Quality. So yeah, it's not perfect, especially the lettering on the bus is a little strange and it put in a film grain for some reason, but I think Google VO3 Quality did a better job. So the rest of these are going to be strictly image to video. So we have this shot here of this model standing under this building and, you know, it's just kind of generic. She's just kind of modeling. Looks pretty good. Here's the result from VO3 Fast. You know, there's some strange warping, but altogether, it looks fairly realistic. If you zoom in on her face, because there's not a lot of resolution there, it's not the best result, but not too bad. And here's the result from Google VO3 Quality. It's very similar, but I think there's more dynamic physics from VO3 Quality. So Quality wins it for this example. Here's this shot of this man talking to another man, real life footage. Here's VO3 Fast. Again, not too bad. And then here's the result from VO3 Quality. You'll notice that the coffee cup stayed a coffee cup in this generation. So again, VO3 Fast did a better job. Here's two people talking about some jewelry here. Okay. Here's the result from VO3 Fast, which looks okay. There's definitely some distortion going on, but not too bad. And then here's the result from VO3 Quality. I think that the physics look a little bit better in this result, and it also didn't increase the contrast, which tends to happen with some of the lower quality models. So Quality did a better job here. We have a shot of this woman boxing in the park. Here's the VO3 Fast version. You can see we have a different character and more contrast, not the best result. And here's the result from VO3 Quality. I think it's almost indistinguishable from what you would expect a real world video to look like. So as you can see, the quality version of Google VO is better, but the fact that you can use Google VO3 Fast for basically free is very appealing. If you do AI filmmaking or AI video production in a professional capacity at all, the very best value that you can get for your money is to use the Google Ultra plan. And I should note that you can generate 8 video clips using Google VO3 Fast. In the same time, it would take you to generate just one Google VO3 Quality clip. So a lot of times it's just about iteration, and using Google VO3 Fast, you can get that iteration. So moving on, let's talk about some of the announcements from the team at YouTube. They came out this last week with a suite of AI tools inside of their Shorts app. Basically, you have the ability to use a custom version of Google VO3 Fast directly in the Shorts editor on your phone. They announced a new feature that allows you to upload an image and basically do a Mixamo style motion transfer on your characters to do, you know, just silly dancing videos and kind of TikTok style videos. You do have the ability to stylize your videos in various styles. They mentioned pop art or origami, which could be fun. You have the ability to add objects inside of your videos. They even came out with the ability to do speech to soundtrack. So basically you can whisper words into your phone and it will create an entirely new song. This is very similar to using other third-party tools like Suno or Udio. And the final tool that they came out with that I think is really interesting is the ability to edit with AI. Essentially, you can upload your video clips and have Google automatically edit together a rough video. Now, they're calling that rough video a first draft, and I think that's appropriate because it's not going to be fine-tuned or finessed in a way that would be production ready. But make no mistake, automatic video editing is right around the corner. There's a bunch of video editing tools that are dropping that basically promise the ability for you to upload your video footage and get an edited video in return. Most of them are not very good yet, but in the next few months, I can imagine that inside of professional video editing tools, you're going to have these automatic AI video editors that can help you with creating a first pass. And the final bit of news that comes from YouTube is kind of industry shattering. And that's the fact that YouTube, over the last 4 years, has paid their creators over $100 billion. Now, let's put that in perspective. Last year, the entire film industry for the entire world brought in $24.7 billion. And if you take a look at the previous 3 years, that equals $95 billion in the global box office. So YouTube pays its creators more than the entire global box office. But that doesn't tell you the full story. Obviously, whenever you have the box office numbers, that's just the gross total. You have to pay the theaters, you have to pay the distribution and production companies, and ultimately the creators of those films are only getting an incredibly small fraction of the take. So the big question is YouTube ultimately a better place for creators and filmmakers to make money? I think that ultimately this really hints that the future of artist-driven distribution is going to have to be some sort of combination of both YouTube and more than likely in-person experiences. The prominence of theaters in the film industry is slowly shifting to where online creators are taking a much larger take of the global entertainment marketplace. Switching over to just completely different news here, the team at Magnifique released their Precision Upscaler just a couple weeks ago. We wanted to go in and test out how good this tool is for professional work. Let's hop in. So to use Magnifique, all you have to do is go to the Magnifique website, make sure you have Magnifique Upscaler selected, and select Precision. Now, right now, you only have the ability to double the overall size of your image, but they say that you will be able to increase it by a larger multiplier in the very near future. Now, here's a few pro tips for you. Turn that sharpening all the way down. You don't want to hyper sharpen your image. That always just comes across as not as realistic. They have this incredible feature that we'll talk about in just a second called Smart Grain that adds in intelligent and realistic grain into your images, but not too much. It's not like adding in a fake film grain. It's just enough to make it look a bit more realistic. And they have this little slider here for ultra detail. I like keeping that at 7%. It just increases the details without hyper sharpening. So it looks pretty darn good. So for my examples, I have 3 different images here. One of this Birdman character, he's like an animated character. One of a character that's kind of me in this sci-fi world, and then one of Dave Clark dressed as a mummy here. And let's go ahead and drag and drop those images into the upload section in Magnifique and go ahead and click upscale. So let's take a look at the before and after here. So here's before and here is after, and you can see it looks very realistic. It didn't hyper sharpen it in any sort of strange way. And in the background, it's grainy, but not in a bad way. It really comes across as much more realistic and filmic. So it did an incredible job. Now let's take a look at example number 2 here. So again, we have this picture of me, and here's after the upresing. So you can see there's grain in the background. The bokeh has very realistic qualities, and the texturing on the skin looks incredibly realistic. So it did an amazing job. And then finally, we have the shot of Dave as a mummy here. So shot number 1, this is before, and then 2 after. You can see it looks really, really good. And it doesn't hyper sharpen or add in details that weren't present. Obviously, you could turn up the creativity slider if you wanted to add in more details, but I like it up-resing in a much more realistic way. This almost looks like you just took a camera and shot this character, so it did a really good job. Now, I want to compare this to other AI image up-resers on the market. So we have this original image here. Here's the same image up-resed inside of Midjourney, and I think Midjourney did a pretty good job. Midjourney is really good at up-resing images that have characters that have plasticky style faces, so not too bad. Here's the result from Topaz Gigapixel, and you can see tons of resolution, looks very realistic. There's a lot more of that realistic halo and chromatic aberrations that you would hope to see, so a really good generation. And then finally, we have this result from Magnifique. And honestly, I gotta say, I think Magnifique did the best job in this example. So again, here's the raw low-res image from Midjourney, and here's the up-resed image in Midjourney. You can see, man, the skin just looks like plastic, so not a great result. Here's the same image using Gigapixel, and it does a pretty good job, but I think that the texturing, the way the skin flows, does not seem really realistic. It looks close, but not the best. And then finally, we have Magnifique. And again, look how realistic that looks. Obviously, the core image might have some room for improvement, but the way in which it up-resed the existing image, it did an amazing job. All of the small specks, the wrinkles, the detail really comes across as very, very realistic. So it did an amazing job. And then finally, here's our original mummy image. Here's the same image up-resed using Midjourney. Not very realistic at all. Here's the image up-resed using Topaz Gigapixel. Again, it did a really good job, but the skin, there's just something about it that looks just a little bit plasticky. And then finally, we have the shot from Magnifique. And again, the resolution is not as big as the image from Topaz, but I think the overall quality really comes across as much more realistic. If you're into realistic lip syncing, be sure to check out our tutorial we dropped this last week, where I show you all of the various lip syncing tools and we go through a full workflow. Next week, we actually have a really cool tutorial about consistent characters. Now, all of that being said, let's take a look at our final workflow example for today's episode. I came across a really interesting example from Superhuman's newsletter, where they basically were using AI to generate ad mockups across different styles. So I don't want to take credit for this, but I loved the workflow. So what we're going to do is hop into FreePic and go ahead and select Nano Banana. So let's go over here to Google and then Nano Banana. You'll notice that I'm using that model because it's, I think, more intelligent when it comes to complex prompts. And for our image reference, we're going to use this picture of a shoe here. This is just from Midjourney, but let's say that we want to create dynamic advertisements for this shoe. So I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop that into the image reference. And for our prompt, we'll link in the description of this video. Essentially, what we're saying is we want to have 4 different images with a mockup for an airport display, a shopping mall, a billboard, and a tech blog / website banner. And we'll do 4 iterations. Make sure for this one, we're in square mode, and go ahead and click generate. We have a few different examples here. Here's example number 1, and it's pretty cool. You can see we have different mockups. Obviously, are they the best mockups in the world? Maybe not, but if you need a quick example, especially if you're working on a branding pitch deck, it's really not that bad. This one here didn't follow the prompt exactly, but not bad. This one's okay. And then finally, we have this image here, which is pretty incredible because not only did it generate all of the images we were looking for, it also intelligently put in a logo in every single one of the images, and it contextually changed the text in the advertisements. So for example, future steps now arriving, that's in an airport. It makes sense, right? Unleash your urban edge. Maybe that's a shopping mall reference. I'm not entirely sure. Command the road. That totally makes sense for a billboard advertisement. And finally, we have this image here in the bottom right, and it has the little buttons for minimizing and closing the browser. It did an amazing job. So I think really intelligent workflows using tools like Nano Banana can just help you save a lot of time if you work with a lot of clients. There are a ton of AI film competitions popping up around the world. Dare I say there are more competitions than ever before. The first one that I want to talk about is our 3rd annual AI horror film competition. This year, we've partnered up with Epidemic Sound to give away a prize pool of over $9,000. This is your chance to make a film that features Halloween or horror-themed elements, and our team of judges can't wait to see what you create. There are also a few other competitions that you should know about. The first is a grant program from Leonardo. They are giving 5 lucky artists $10,000 to pursue their own creative initiative. You get to decide what that is and basically pitch it to Leonardo, and Shelby here at Curious Refuge will be one of the judges for that event. If you have a really creative idea that you need some money to pull off, be sure to submit your project over on the Leonardo website. You'll find a link below this video. There's also the Chroma Awards that you can enter, where the first place winner will receive up to $2,000. And the Door Brothers created an AI competition to create an off-the-wall video. Submissions for that one are due on October 3rd, and the prize is $20,000. So be sure to check out that one. And there are also a ton of community events happening around the world. Kevin the Kid, who is the instructor of our advanced AI filmmaking class at Curious Refuge, is premiering Echo Hunter on September 20th out in Los Angeles, with a digital premiere on the 21st. If you happen to be in the LA area, be sure to click the link below. We're giving away 40 free tickets to the community. We would love to see you at that event. There's the Korea AI Content Awards on the 26th of September. The AI Media Awards, which I am a judge for, will be happening in Zurich. We actually have 10 tickets for that one as well. If you want any of those tickets, be sure to let us know in the Discord and we can send those your way. And then finally, we have Curious Refuge meetups happening all around the world. Before this month is over, we'll have a meetup in Mumbai, Denver, and Palm Beach. If you want to host a meetup in your area, be sure to let us know. And that brings us to our AI films of the week. So the first film that I want to highlight is an incredible film concept from Jeff Synthesized. He's one of my favorite AI creators. He basically created a film called 2x2. It's kind of a Noah's Ark style film, and it very much feels like an early 2000s style animated film project. I think he did an amazing job. It's totally worth checking out. One of the more underappreciated film concepts that I've seen over the last few months. The next project that I want to highlight is the winner of the Reply AI film competition called Love at First Sight by Jacopo Real. Hopefully I'm saying your name correctly. This was one of the most incredible AI films that I've seen to date. And what I really like is there's a ton of emotional nuance inside of the film. It's really beautiful. The soundtrack is amazing. The pacing's very nice. So I think they did an incredible job with this project. And the final project I want to shout out is called Un Rêve Liquide by Andrea Lamatz, and they were the third place winner from the Reply AI film competition. I really like this project because it features this hand-drawn aesthetic that typically would be very challenging to pull off, but the smooth transitions look really nice and kind of separate it from a lot of the AI projects that you typically see. Okay, thank you so much for watching this week's episode of AI Film News. Of course, as always, you can subscribe over on Curious Refuge to get AI film news sent directly to your email inbox. We also will give you a free AI filmmaking course just for signing up. And as always, you can like and subscribe here on the platform to get the latest tutorials and content directly here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode. If you have any questions at all, be sure to let us know in the comments, and best of luck on your creative projects.